It should feel like magic. It should feel like automatic, one-click portfolio buy. CASA and FD are getting the highest allocation within financial services. I think I would spectacularly love 2023 for being the year that we have. The beauty is, as Indians, we're already very frugal. Not investing is equally risky. Two words here were like very, very critical for me. One is the word transform and not touch.
Hi, I'm Neil Borate. I'm Deputy Editor at Mint. And today I'm joined by Kavita Subramaniam, who is co-founder at Upstocks, to discuss our shared passions, which are personal finance and investing. So Kavita, tell me a bit about your journey.
My journey, well, I'm born and raised in Bombay, and I studied at IIT Bombay, and then I went on to work with McKinsey for 3 years in the Bombay office. And that experience was excellent for me in terms of, teaching me how to grow a large company and how to scale a large company, and generally equipped me with business skills. But after McKinsey, I went and worked in microfinance for a bit. So literally in working through the course of a year and a half with rural below poverty line women very specifically. And what we were doing there is we were giving these women very small ticket size loans, like 3,000, 4,000 rupee loans, which obviously they didn't even have access to otherwise. And they would take these small ticket loans and invest behind cows, goats, right? And the interesting thing is in the span of 6 to 9 months, less than a year, these cows and goats are multiplied. And their ROI on their investment was spectacular. Something that, we sitting in urban India would not
Compounding
even like,
in a very physical sense.
Yeah, it was incredible to watch. So suddenly in front of my eyes, by virtue of just giving out these small ticket loans, a family that couldn't afford that, I'm seeing bache chappal pen rahe.
Right.
They've got suddenly access to saying that I'm going to eat 3 meals a day, not 2. I'm going to get my kids to go to school. I'm going to get them access to medical facilities. And so for me, there was a fundamentally transforming moment in my life. Because to be very, very honest, I went from Bombay to the villages thinking, I'm going to go and explain. And I was just blown away saying, the amount of entrepreneurial energy in Tier 2, Tier 3 India is phenomenal. People there know what to do. They're probably 10x smarter than all of us. What they just lack is the kind of opportunity that you and I take for granted in the financial sense.
Yeah.
And so in front of my eyes, I could see the power of finance in completely transforming a family, an entire community, village. And think of the overall potential there, right? People usually talk about education as that thing that can fundamentally transform a country. But education gestation period is very, very high. And then one generation is lost, right? So this for me was a very, very big, massive life turning point, saying, how do I use the business skills that I have learned to possibly not just scale large companies, etc., which is also very, very important, but can I also harness it to help fundamentally transform hundreds of millions of lives? So that sort of became the goal, saying two words here were like very, very critical for me. One is the word transform and not touch. So for example, if you're in FMCG and you put out even one brand of something, hundreds of millions of people are going to use it. But in a way, you touch lives, not transform. So for me, the key word was transform. And then the second thing was scale. It has to be hundreds of millions of lives. It can't be like handful of people.
What year was this? Was this before India's microfinance revolution?
Yeah. It was before, microfinance ended up getting a bag. It was very, very early stages of microfinance. But that also taught me the flip side, right? It is that the power of finance to do good is massive, but it needs to be harnessed right, right? Because the same weapon used wrongly can also have massive harm, right? And this actually is one of the key pillars around which Upstocks is built today.
Yeah.
So I eventually ended up getting my MBA in finance from the Wharton School in the US. I came back, worked in private equity as an investor, and so sort of understood and learned finance for 6-7 years. And then I got the opportunity to come back to this question saying, how can I now harness my knowledge of finance, my knowledge of building large-scale businesses to fundamentally transform lives of people, and therefore Upstocks, where the question for us today is, those many years ago when I was doing microfinance, the question was, how do we make sure every Indian gets a bank account? Tabhi bank accounts nahi the.
Right.
Today that problem is solved, right? Every Indian broadly has access to bank accounts. The beauty is, as Indians, we're already very frugal, as people. We know how to save, right? India has an average 30% savings rate. But none of us know how to invest well.
Yeah.
And then what that means in the country, which is 6.5-7% inflation rate, is that you're actually losing your hard-earned cash every year.
Yeah. Even today, I think financial savings are a small fraction of overall savings, and within the financial savings, stocks and mutual funds are a tiny
Very tiny fraction, right? There is an allocation it's going to FD mostly.
Yeah.
If there is, CASA and FD are
Yeah.
getting the highest allocation within financial services, and you know this. Post-tax, of course, they're not even beating inflation.
It's like throwing free money to banks.
Yeah. But the thing is, most Indians don't know how to invest right.
Yeah.
Right? So there are two things. One is knowing that you need to invest. And when you say the word invest, some section of people look about it saying, oh my God, risky.
Yeah.
What they've not understood is not investing is equally risky. You literally eroded your wealth year on year. And, so that really is what we're trying to do here.
So Kavita, I think one reason why financial savings are so low and stocks and bonds particularly are low within that is because we have so few family stories of wealth creation through stocks or through mutual funds. They're a recent phenomena. If you think back to your family, are there such stories that you can recollect that sparked your interest in the stock market?
Oh yeah. So firstly, while stock participation in India is low today, I'm at least excited that it is growing in leaps and bounds. So there is that. So for example, in 2007, I want to say 2007-8, when I was at McKinsey, I remember studying equity participation at a 2% in India. 2016, still the 2%. But in the last 5 years, it's exploded. Thanks to a lot of initiatives by the government. It's grown 3x. That said, there's a clear long way to go. And part of it is right. What you're saying is, in India, parents will never talk about money with their kids.
Yeah.
Right? And there's an entire generation of India that's been sold FDs as the only investment destination. Now, in my own life, to give you a personal example, my dad, we're a very average middle class family with 4 kids, right? My dad was working in a pharma factory as a QA person, and my mom was a school teacher. And it's very incredible, but my dad in those times, thanks to his friends who happened to be in the stock markets, who advised him to invest in mutual funds, ended up making very early investments behind mutual funds. And so by the time he retired, although his own salary perhaps could have not really accommodated it, he had all 4 of us educated with foreign degrees.
Yeah.
And all of this on the back of the fact that he had the foresight to invest behind mutual funds.
Yeah. So note to self, have the right friends.
Yes, definitely. Or a trusted advisor, right?
Yeah, or that.
Yeah.
And in fact, a lot of these mutual funds in their marketing material give the return since inception. And I always think that, for schemes that were launched in the late 90s, early 2000s, whoever would have been there since inception. But I think your dad is probably...
Oh my God, yeah. Long-term investor, which is incredible. And by the way, speaking of, right, one of the things that we are trying to change in the market is this concept of investing right. Because when people invest, literally the only thing they're looking at is returns. Every Indian intrinsically knows that risk के बिना returns नहीं है. If something is giving you outsized returns, must be कि कोई risk है या कोई catch है, वो हमें पता है. But when it comes to investment instruments, we don't know this. We're not educated about this. So one of our big goals as Upstocks is how do we bring in this language of risk and returns, into mainstream. If I were to ask you, how are you going to measure the risk of an instrument? What is the metric you're going to use, right? You will probably know because you're, of course, in this space. But even you may actually struggle to articulate it or actually apply it at that point of decision making, right?
Absolutely.
Now, imagine for most of us, it's not even part of our vocabulary. So that's work that Upstocks has done. We have a purple badge to tell you that these are the top funds on a risk and reward basis. If you're interested further, then you have a lot of information around the standard deviation, the Sharpe, the Sortino, and so on. And so we are hopefully helping people make the right decisions based on risk and reward.
Yeah. Why purple though? Interesting choice of color.
That's our brand colors.
Fair enough.
We're brand purple as Upstocks.
Yeah.
But before we go down this universe of right instruments and right investments, I would love to hear your story because I've really enjoyed reading your articles.
Thank
a lot
you.
of in-depth work around how to invest right. And for example, there was an article you written recently about insurance, health insurance specifically, and what is the right cover and so on. So I'd love to understand your story, your background, what in your life may have prompted you on this path.
Yeah. So my story is a case study in what not to do in terms of career, in terms of investing, every aspect of life. So I'll start with my career. I studied law, and had I worked in the law firm, I think my income would have been some multiples of what it is now. But at the end of my degree, I felt that I really, really had to understand economics and finance. Part of it is because my parents, both doctors, used to discuss this a lot with me. They wanted to, I think, spark that interest as well. And so I did a second degree then in economics.
Oh, wow.
And then I sort of got into, initially I worked for a financial advisor, and then I began writing about personal finance. But yeah, had I been smarter, I would have gone straight into finance. The other thing in terms of as an investor, I have done F&O trading and lost money there. I have redeemed too early from my mutual funds and I've lost money there. Now I think I'm a lot more sorted. I have a relatively concentrated mutual fund portfolio, but I'm very happy with the kind of returns I'm getting. And again, thinking back to that family history, my parents also didn't have any knowledge of the stock market, any interest in it. They invested most of their savings in real estate.
Of course.
And with all the attendant problems. So they had tenants that were not leaving, not vacating. There were court cases. They went through that whole journey. And now, thankfully, it's a lot easier for them because now there is an organized stock market there. And for me, and because I'm lucky to be born at this time, I don't have to go through that being forced to invest in real estate or gold. That's my story.
Very interesting and very incredible story. Law and then finance.
Yeah, no, far too long, in education, but hopefully it'll help me somewhere.
So, this is another topic I want to touch upon saying. So, of all the things that you studied and researched, right, what are you seeing as some of the top pitfalls that people are making? And what are some of those messages you really, really wish everybody knew?
I think the biggest pitfall is that people fall into the narrative of the time. Then they buy stocks or they make investments based on that narrative. So in 2022, when the narrative was about Fed hiking and interest rates rising, there was a lot of fear. A lot of people weren't putting money in, let's say, tech stocks that were correcting. People who looked through past that would have made money this year. If you think of 2018 to 20 in our Indian stock market, it was quality and growth stocks that were pushing the market higher, very narrow breadth of stocks. And so people chased that. They put money in funds that were of that nature. So Axis Mutual Fund very famously is a quality growth oriented fund house. And then after 2020, it flipped to value. So people would have suddenly seen those same in favor funds doing really badly in the subsequent years. So you really have to look through the narrative of that time.
And I think the lesson that we are trying to tell people is, don't come for investing because you have a short-term financial goal. That's not what investing is, because the markets are going to surprise you. And nobody has predicted the market ever, despite what anybody wants to say, right? To the contrary, you really, really need to have a long-term horizon. A rank minimum 5 years, if not 10 or 15, is the only way that you will actually end up certainly and consistently making money in this market, right? Yeah. Because for us, it's very, very clear. A lot of people come to us with the FOMO of saying, "Arey, market upar jayega ki niche jayega? Main kaun se stock mein invest karu?" And our answer is very, very clear. We believe that for most people, 99% of the population, you don't have the time or the tools to regularly keep yourself abreast of all that's happening in the stock market, right? And therefore, if you are looking to invest long term, this is the best market in the world and it's the best time as well. Very simply because India is the fastest growing GDP in the world.
Yeah.
You are so lucky, and well, not just lucky, it's obviously our collective hard work that's propelling this GDP forward.
Yeah.
So why shouldn't we be beneficiaries of this GDP growth, right? And what is the best way to be the beneficiary of this GDP growth? Utterly simple. Invest behind the top companies of India, which are growing spectacularly well, right? Look at the top companies in India. They are globally top class, world class, right? So it's very simple. If you can invest behind the Nifty, for example, as a passive index fund, over the next 10, 15 years, as this country grows, as our GDP grows, you are bound to make a very, very handsome return.
Yeah. And I would say that even for people who don't believe entirely in that, who think that maybe it's time to diversify, there are enough solutions in the mutual fund industry where you can buy a multi-asset fund and take exposure to gold, to
Oh no, gold is an absolutely different.
yeah. But I'm saying now that range of vehicles is available, which wasn't there in our parents' time.
Oh, absolutely. And the awareness is hopefully higher, yet the amount of mis-selling is also kept pace. So I think that's one of the...
It's probably gone up.
Yeah, exactly. So for example, my dad, as a senior citizen, close to 80, was being missold some high-risk products.
Yeah,
And you know, that's one of the really big kickers that led me to say, you know what, this is just utterly wrong. And it's the same example I said earlier. Finance done right is so powerful. Finance done wrong can equally create havoc in people's lives, right?
Yeah.
It's well known that a medical illness and a lack of medical insurance is the top driver of poverty world over.
Yeah.
Right? The single breadwinner having a medical event, they lose their income stream plus the attendant hospital costs is what drives most families into poverty, right? These are so easily fixable with simple instruments like insurance and so on, right? So that's the goal, to say, how do we get people to take the right steps?
Yeah. No, I had a very personal incident with that. I had a fracture in April of 2023. And for the first time in my life, I had to claim health insurance. And I was really thankful that I had my own separate individual health insurance policy, which was apart from my employer provided one. So I was able to claim in a cashless manner. I didn't have to pay anything. It wasn't a tedious reimbursement process. You know, it felt real. Like I had paid premiums for all these years, and finally a time had come when I needed to claim, and I was able to claim. So, I mean, that's my big lesson from the year gone by.
Can I ask you back this question, because I found it very interesting when we were chatting just now that you are an expert in financial services. You understand, especially your article on health insurance was the one that is like got us on this chat, right? And yet, what I found very interesting when I spoke to you is, आपने कभी health insurance खरीदा ही नहीं.
Yes.
Like even knowing too much
It can be a barrier.
is a barrier.
Yeah. So the individual policy that I have is one that my dad purchased for me more than a decade ago. And I've never topped it up. I've never supplemented it with another policy, which I should have done. Partly it was because until my fracture, I never had to claim anything. So it never felt real. And the other is exactly what you said, that there is just so much information because I'm in this field that it sometimes just stops me from making a decision.
So please do watch out for the Upstocks insurance launch that is set to come up, because these are the kind of questions we're trying to solve for. So for example, in our studies, we're finding a couple of things. Either people don't have insurance, or if they do have insurance, I'm talking about the term plan, then it is a cookie cutter template, 1 crore or 2 crore. And somehow people have not even done the math ki mere dependents kitne hain, what is the kind of lifestyle I need for them, etc., right? Like that number needs to be different for everybody. So how do we get people to buy the right amount of insurance? And obviously not club it with investment ideas, all of that mis-selling that's happened in that space. Similarly for health, right? Somehow, whether you're in Bombay or you're in a tier 3 town, people have a 5 lakh cover.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that.
So these are some of the things that we're really trying to solve for our customers. And exactly like I said, first of all, insurance is such a dull subject. Two, it is a fairly complicated subject. And
there's a lack of trust.
हाँ जी बिल्कुल, क्योंकि mis-selling ही इतना है. So it's a complex enough subject, married with a lack of trust, equal to either people are completely not buying something at all, which is a majority of people, even someone with your level of understanding, or it is that I bought something which is not right for me.
Yeah.
This is the exact problem that we are trying to solve, and we're trying to solve this asset class by asset class. For example, even in FDs. FDs is something that India should take pride on, कि सबको आता है, right? India is FD land.
Yeah.
Yet within FDs, a lot of people have not understood that there are bank FDs and there are NBFC FDs, and there is a certain amount of risk difference between them, or regulatory differences between them. For example, it's not even commonly known कि bank FDs only insure up to 5 lakhs. पहले 2 लाख का था, अभी 5 लाख तो कम से कम आ गया है. Whereas an NBFC FD is not insured at all. Of course, they give you better returns. So these are the kind of things that people need to be aware of and need to be taking decisions with their eyes wide open.
Yeah.
That's sort of the goal for us.
I remember doing a story on the Yes Bank 81 bonds mis-selling. They were sold as FDs to senior citizens. And the rates were higher, not that much higher also. Like if a regular FD was giving 8%, this would give 9.5. But the risk was totally concealed. And these guys lost, in some cases, their entire life savings.
So this is the kind of stuff that it completely makes my blood boil, saying, my God, do we really need to do this to both extremes? Like senior citizens especially, it's like heart-rending when such stories happen.
Yeah.
Like it only happened with my dad.
Yeah.
So this is one of our biggest endeavors to say, how will we always be presenting people with the options, the information that is always in the long-term best interest. As Upstox, we will, we're backed by Mr. Tata. Anything we do will always be in the best interest of the consumer. We don't need to make money at the expense of one average Indian. It's not who we are, and it's not who we ever will be. So our goal, our endeavor right now is to collect that wealth of information and present it to people in a way that at their point of choice is available to them and helps them make better life choices. So the whole goal is, you mentioned this, you were a lawyer first and you went into finance. Our goal is, how do you take finance out of the equation? Because आज ज़्यादातर लोग are working for money, है ना? Which is wrong. We're all individuals full of like passion, full of talent, full of abilities. Imagine that world where you didn't work for money, and let's say sabka money was a given, then what would you be doing? That's the kind of liberation we want people to enjoy, saying, you know what, when you were born, your dad got your medical insurance, right? Whatever, whenever you're a kid.
Yeah.
Right? If you could do that for the next generation, and if everybody in his shoes did that right, so when your turn came, you were sorted.
Yeah.
So how do we get that sorted so that, by the time this generation grows up as adults, they are not worrying about money at all. Money is no longer an object for what they do for work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's sort of, hopefully the end goal that we get to.
Absolutely. Kavita, let's talk about the year gone by. If we were to zoom out 10 years down the line, what are the 2 or 3 things that you would remember 2023 by?
I think I would spectacularly love 2023 for being the year that we have solved and launched a slew of initiatives to help people invest right. So if you look at Upstox 3 years ago, our campaign was Start Karke Dekho, because the insight was basically what you had said also, which is that, most Indians are not investing stocks mein, ya mutual funds mein. 6% equity participation in a country of this scale, right? Most other countries are in the double digit. US is close to 50%. How do we get more people to start participating in the equities story was our goal 3 years ago. And as we went through the journey is when we realized that, guess what? There is a certain set of people who are not participating, who need to participate. But truly, what is holding everybody back, including those who are currently participating, is the lack of knowledge on how to invest right. Yeah. So we made a pivot around saying, our goal is not just start karke dekho, but start right and invest right. And a whole range of products have been launched. A whole range of initiatives around Learn have been launched on Upstox between last year and this year, both on our Invest and Pro side, by the way. A lot of nudges to say how to trade right. What are the mistakes you could be committing? What are better strategies that can help you be more profitable? So that, I think, is something that will last for the next 10, 15, 20 years. And hopefully we'll look back at 23 as saying this is the year that started us enabling hundreds of millions of Indians to invest better. And generally, like for us, for some, for most of us here, it's possibly a better lifestyle, a better car or whatever, house and so on. For a huge swath of India, even FD investments is not something they do, right? So getting them into that fold is a difference between the next generation being completely better off, better education, better medical facilities and so on, right? So for us, I think I would love it if I can look back to 23 as being that pivotal year where we said, yes, we're going to enable a lot more people to invest, but also to invest right and focus on changing their long-term generational ability to do things that they're passionate about.
I'm really glad because I've seen that in bull markets, there's always a push towards riskier products. There's always a push towards leverage trading. And the going is great when the market is trending upwards, but when it's down, everything just falls apart. So there are certain inherent advantages to a more diversified approach, especially at times like these.
So see, we believe in making sure that every asset class is available and you have a diversified portfolio. So clearly you need to have equities, debt, gold, and there's a whole range of fixed income products and so on. But I think it's very, very critical to educate people on what is right for them personally. And to make sure that people are not just chasing the FOMO of get rich quick, ya mere dost ne itna bana diya, maine itna banaya. That's not what the markets are for.
How do you invest?
How do I invest? Passives. I'm completely like a Nifty index investor.
So you're going to give me a party. You had a fantastic year.
But my year se nahi matlab hai. That's the whole thing. I genuinely, I don't know, we're talking about look back to this year, but the look back for me will be like 5, 10, 15 years. horizon for investing for me is just completely different. I've been a private equity investor, right? So
Yeah.
I've gone through that cycle of saying, एक तो हम private equity में 5 साल के नीचे दिखते ही नहीं है. Yeah. So that discipline has come from the beginning for me. Ki there is no short-term winning in this space. And once you've invested, there are any number of variables that happen in the short term, right? And that's not the best way to gauge. The best way to gauge your investment thesis is in a medium to long term, have the fundamental drivers that's held. And for me, the fundamental drivers, I'm very clear, is very simple. Yeah, India's growth story.
Yeah, yeah.
And so long as you believe in the India growth story, you believe in the Nifty, and therefore, this is a story that will sustain next 15, 20 years.
And do you have a debt and gold allocation also, or?
Yeah, of course. So I'm one of those people who don't believe in buying physical gold at all.
Right.
I don't buy jewelry, much to my husband's complete surprise.
Yeah.
I don't invest in jewelry. I don't invest in real estate.
Oh, no real estate?
No real estate. We don't own a house.
Okay.
I don't believe it's a good investment.
So you're firmly on the rent side of the buy versus rent debate.
हम rent हैं.
Right.
हम clearly rent हैं. So buy is okay if you're buying to flip but not buying to live in, because that's not an investment at all then, right? Is it? So yeah, we don't own real estate.
Interesting. And debt is through mutual funds or FDs? Or?
Mutual funds. Some amount of FDs are historically, but broadly to mutual funds. Overnights are my favorite.
And gold, you do SGBs or ETFs?
SGBs and ETFs both. Because SGB का tranche कभी-कभी आता है.
हाँ, exactly. That's the issue.
I mean, my team is trying to tell me about the secondary SGB market. I should be doing all of that. I'm like, my God, इतना नहीं अक्ल लगाना. So I end up doing ETFs.
Correct. Na time bhi nahi hai. So I personally have a very similar approach. Most of my equity allocation is through a mutual fund. It's a very concentrated bet, so I wouldn't suggest that to everyone.
One mutual fund.
Yeah, a lot of it is one mutual fund. It's well known. I've said this before.
I'm not going to say anymore because you clearly know what I'm going to say next. But yeah, sure.
No, the way I see it is, if you have sufficient confidence, if you've done your homework, then you can have a concentrated portfolio. And I'm one of those people when it comes to that mutual fund, Parag Parikh Flexi Cap. But I do have other asset classes. So I do have gold through ETFs. I have debt through another scheme of theirs. And I also have a bit of Nifty ETF. So I have NPS. So I have a very diversified portfolio overall. But within MF, I have a concentrated portfolio.
Okay. My 2 cents is going to be... So here's a mistake a lot of Indians end up making. Yeah. काफी लोगों के portfolio में मैंने देखा है 10 से 20 mutual funds.
Yes.
Now, a mutual fund is by definition a portfolio. It is already de-risked and hedged and all that. So, मेरे ख्याल में 10-15 is like you're redoing what the mutual fund has already done, right?
Yeah.
So, I do believe that 3 to 5 is the max you should be holding. My personal reaction to what you're saying, of course, you've done your homework, you know what you're doing, but one does seem like a humongously concentrated risk. So, I'm very curious what led you to do that. And
So my thought process was as follows, that because a mutual fund is an inherently diversified vehicle, even a single mutual fund has 20-30 stocks. So that gives me a broad flavor of the market.
तो उसमें stocks का risk नहीं है, which I'm agreed
Yes.
with, but there's a fund house risk you're carrying.
There is. So that's where...
Fund manager risk. And
Yeah.
कल को वो manager rotate हो गया.
No, you're right. So that's where I mark myself out and I don't suggest this to the average.
Yeah. Not suggesting to anyone that's doing this.
Correct. But hopefully it'll get me closer to my financial goals.
Yeah. The other interesting thing I've noticed is the people that know a lot are the worst investors. वो करते नहीं है. वो analysis paralysis में चले जाते हैं.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know if you've experienced that.
Yeah, with insurance that clearly was...
But even in investing, has that been a barrier for you?
Sometimes. So probably with SGBs that happened. If I had devoted enough time to it, I should have bought them in the early tranches and I'd be sitting on a good 13-14%, mostly tax-free gain. So just pure inertia.
What do you think will help you overcome that inertia?
In some cases, it's somebody who bridges that trust gap. So in insurance, clearly, if I'm able to locate good unbiased research, and we in Mint, we are working on this, that will solve the problem for me. The other bit is just convenience. So there are so many products that are just hard to invest in. It's a hassle. Like if you think of all of these post office products, many of them are really good. Yeah. But my God, you have to go to the post office and...
Yeah.
I'm a millennial. I want everything on my phone.
You know, just to add to that, I think we tend to forget how long we've come, by the way, because Pre-2016,
Yeah.
opening a DMAT account was a 30-40 page form, physical form हुआ करता था.
हाँ.
आपको 40 जगह में sign करना है. Now imagine you're not in any metro,
Yeah.
right? So you have to literally download, and remember I'm talking about 2015, 2016, so modems and whatnot. So you have to download the form,
Yeah.
you have to print it,
Yeah.
sign it and courier it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So equity participation was a completely a metro story. क्योंकि यहाँ पे बैंक से वो पर्सन कम से सर यहाँ पे साइन कीजिए वहाँ पे साइन कीजिए, राइट? द रेस्ट ऑफ द फॉर्म ही इज फिलिंग फॉर यू. एंड वो भी जो फॉर्म्स आते थे हमारे पास 50% गेट रिजेक्टेड क्योंकि एक सिग्नेचर मिस हो गया. So we've actually come a very, very long way from where the world used to be. I'm just telling you, investing has become easier.
Yeah.
That said, of course, there is ways to go, and hopefully. So, for example, the next thing that we are looking at doing is a one-click portfolio buy, which I think should solve everyone's hassles. Like we're just trying to make investing, first and foremost, investing right, trust-based investing right. We've done the homework for you, and we'll do in-depth homework to make sure you're investing the right way. And two is how do we make it simple and hassle-free, what we like to call auto magic investing.
Yeah.
It should feel like magic. It should feel like automatic. It should not take any brain space from you. So that's sort of what we're trying to get done.
Yeah, yeah. So Kavita, finally, what are your New Year's resolutions?
My New Year resolution is to spend more time with my kids. They were young, 5 and 3, and time passes by, and there is so much joy in the small things in life. Sometimes we tend to forget those small joys in the pursuit of the larger goals or worrying about inane stuff that may not even matter in the next 5 years. So I think the big goal is to filter things through a 5-year lens and only focus on items that will matter 5 years from now and hopefully ignore the rest of the noise.
Yeah, in life as in markets.
As in markets, as in life, yeah, a 5-year lens. Otherwise, we are as human beings designed for, and of course, every app on the planet is trying to get us to react instantly, constantly. And I think detoxing from that and taking the long view is I think, critical for us. And I also want to spend a lot more time in the offline world, i.e. real world, which somehow we have to start to qualify, huh? That's sort of the goals for me. How about you?
So my big one is to lose weight. I mean, I know it's an annual one for me and a lot of people, but hopefully this time I'll make some progress. And yeah, buy an insurance policy, a bigger one.
Yes, absolutely. Super. This was a great conversation.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your time, Neil.
Investment in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.